Okay. I'd like to acknowledge all of the Indigenous people, including the Interior Salish, Sinaiaks, and the others who have historically hunted, fished, and lived on this land, as well as those who share the land today, the Boundary Métis Community Association and the Boundary All Nations Aboriginal Council. Welcome to the first Peace Cafe of 2022.
We're not here, you can't hear us.
I was very excited when I heard Pablo Pastor talk about two peace studies grads, as he put it, who went to the Glasgow Peace Climate Conference. And one of the reasons I was so excited was because peace studies at Selkirk College means a great deal to me. And I was thinking about the very first peace studies course, credit course. It was actually given in Nelson, and my husband was one of the organizers of that. And I wanted to see what date that course was given. And I looked it up in this document that Myler wrote about the history of the Muir Center. And what I found, I thought I would share with you. The future of the Muir Center for Peace is built on many foundations, none more important than the spirit and energy of students and youth. In the early years of development, volunteer projects at the Muir site were driven by student idealism. Whether a Canada World Youth Brigade completing interior demolition work in 2003, or international students performing cleanup work over several years, youth has left its indelible mark on the Muir landscape. Following from the first Muir course in autumn 2004, an advisory group of students was brought together at Selkirk College in early spring 2005. Their point of view was made perfectly clear. Build on peace courses already offered at the college, develop a peace studies program which focuses on the histories and cultures of peace in the region and beyond, concentrate on spiritual and philosophical traditions of peace, and on the environment and social justice. Finally, prepare students to work locally and internationally with NGOs and government agencies in the areas of peace, human rights, and social justice. Myler wrote that in 2006, and he would be just very happy to see two students who went through the Peace and Justice Studies program. Thank you so much for being here. So we have with us two of those peace and social justice grads. Linn Murray is a 22-year-old Nelson-based environmental activist and educator. He is a recent Selkirk alumni who studied history and peace and justice studies. In 2019, Linn helped form Fridays for Future West Kootenay and has been a longtime volunteer and lobbyist with Citizens Climate Lobby Nelson West Kootenay. You may also know Linn as a co-host and producer of the Ecocentric Environment News radio show, as a naturalist at Kokanee Creek Nature Center, or from various other social and environmental causes. In 2021, he went to COP26 in Glasgow, representing Stop Ecocide Canada and Fridays for Future West Kootenay. So welcome, Linn. Jamie Hunter is a 21-year-old Peace and Justice Studies student at Selkirk. Jamie is the co-founder of Stop Ecocide Canada, the Canadian branch of the Stop Ecocide campaign, which aims to make ecocide an international criminal law. Jamie is also an organizer with Fridays for Future and Extinction Rebellion in Nelson, and has been involved in many other environmental and social justice causes. He recently attended COP26 in Glasgow to help advocate for ecocide to become an international crime. So welcome, guys. We're so happy that you're here, leading the way into 2022.
Thanks, Linda. Yeah. When you were talking about kind of the Mirror Center coming together, it made me think of my time at Selkirk, where the Mirror Center was this place that I would go to, especially in the winter when I was getting so little sunlight because I had classes from darkness to darkness. I would go out to the Mirror Center and sit on the benches by overlooking the Columbia and just have some sun, have some light, and take a breath. Moving into, we'll have our presentation first, and then we'll have some questions and answers for the rest of the evening. And so I will start by screen sharing, and we will have a brief slideshow, and we'll talk to you all about Stop Ecocide, which is the campaign that we were at COP26 with, and also a bit about our perspectives on that conference. Gonna focus for now mostly on Stop Ecocide Canada and Stop Ecocide International, because it's good to learn about why we're going to COP and why we're doing what we're doing. So I think, Jamie, you can start off the presentation, and me and Jamie will just tag team throughout it.
Yeah, definitely. Hello, everyone. So basically, Stop Ecocide, just the concept of it is to make ecocide an international crime, and ecocide, well, being this definition here, extensive, damage to the environment, essentially. And so basically the focus of the campaign has been on how to make that happen.
Yeah, and like it says here, at present, ecocide isn't a crime in any jurisdiction. We have various elements of crimes against the environment that can be used as part of our Western criminal justice system, but in terms of it actually having a international crime, like an international crime that says genocide is bad and needs to be prosecuted amid the international community, there's no real crimes that would take into account gross and massive damage to the environment, even though in many ways those have equally as terrible effects on communities and on individuals. And
Yeah,
so,
and sorry.
Go ahead.
And in fact, ecocide is actually something which is not only not illegal, but it's actually very explicitly kind of allowed, and companies often focus on it because it's a very good way for them to make money. So of course, these increasing ecocides over the years have led to climate ecocide, and ecocides greatly exacerbate climate change.
And so that's things that unfortunately have become the new normal and that we're seeing all over the world currently, and are projected to get much worse very soon, which is Arctic ice melting, sea levels rising, loss of crops, and loss of coral reefs and biodiversity all over the world. And of course, here in BC, forest fires are something that I know personally for me, working outdoors all summer with children a lot of the time was something that was really impressed on me, how dangerous the situation has become with fire smoke in our communities. Um, yeah, I mean, it's like smoking a few packs of cigarettes every day, and you're, in terms of the health impacts and having that reoccurring year after year is, yeah, it's terrible for us, but we also have to take an international perspective on this, and that countries around the world are really suffering from the impacts of climate change, which is a massive human caused problem and damage to the world, and that's when we see ecocides compounding.
Yeah, so as I kind of said before, climate ecocide is exacerbated. Go back a slide,
There.
please.
Go ahead.
Exacerbated and primarily caused by human activity. And so, of course, this is an interesting thing where several countries are giving legal rights to nature. And there's a couple of examples there. And most recently, the Magpie River in Quebec was actually given legal rights as well.
All
Let's go
right.
to the next slide now, please.
Yes.
Yeah, so with rights, obviously we need responsibilities, and this is where the idea of giving rights to nature can kind of run into some difficulties. So for example, a really obvious analogy here is that our right to life is protected by the criminal law of murder. And so likewise, we're proposing that the rights of nature be protected by the criminal law of ecocide.
Yeah, and that's taking into account an area that's seriously lacking in the Western legal framework, which is, yeah, the rights of nature. I mean, in many countries, Canada currently is lagging very far behind even on the rights of nature. I'd say some positive news recently was Richard Canning's, who's the MP for Grand Forks, Castlegar, and the South Okanagan, introduced a bill that was focused on, it's called the Environmental Bill of Rights, and it's focused on giving people in Canada a right to a clean and healthy environment. And that's a very important part of our legal framework, and many countries already have that. But what most countries don't have is ecocide, which ecocide law, which would, like Jamie said, be the enforcement side of that rights system. So
yeah, so this is kind of a basic kind of idea of different types of law that we typically use. So soft law is kind of like the Paris Agreement is the example given here, or actually very much like COP26, where basically a bunch of countries or people get together and kind of make an agreement in principle and say that they're going to do something, but there's no actual consequences if they don't. So that's kind of soft law. And then civil law really kind of mostly protects businesses. So this is kind of where most of our environmental laws currently sit. And basically the idea is that there are technically penalties for causing harm to the environment, like polluting a river or something like that. But in order to actually have companies held to account, someone needs to take them to court. And that is obviously a very lengthy process, and it costs a lot of money. And because these corporations have good lawyers and lots of money, they can often just get away with it. And in fact, something which I found out a while ago is that some large corporations actually budget fines into their expenses because they know they're going to have to pay them, but it's cheaper to just pay the fines and continue the harmful things that they might be doing than shift their practices. And so criminal law, and particularly international criminal law, is basically at a much higher level than that. And it says, and it goes after the CEOs directly of a company and holds them responsible for the harm that their company causes. And so this is where we hope to make ecocide a crime, so that instead of corporations being able to kind of hide behind their lawyers and the fact that they're companies and therefore are treated as entities, we're targeting the people who are actually causing the harm.
Yeah. And just add in that governments would also be held accountable with international criminal law. So it would be both governments if they're complicit in it, and also bad actors. So yeah, government ministers can no longer issue permits for really serious environmental crimes. Insurers would no longer be able to insure those projects, and yeah, CEOs, boards of directors for companies would have an obligation not to engage in crimes of ecocide, because they could, and their company could be held criminally responsible. So that's a big piece that of law that we're missing currently as a global community, and it also acts as a global equalizing force. So a company can't go internationally and like a mining company based in Canada can't go down to Guatemala and cause major environmental devastation to communities and to forests without consequences, because the law, when brought to the International Criminal Court, has that global scope. So Jamie, would you like to take us into the governance of the International Criminal Court?
Yes, so the Rome Statute is kind of the governing document of the ICC, and there are currently 4 crimes on it, well, listed here: genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and crimes of aggression. And we're proposing to add ecocide as the 5th crime. One thing which I find really interesting is that in the 1990s, when the Rome Statute was being drafted, ecocide was actually included, but it was then dropped from the final draft without any explanation at the insistence of a few countries. So this is really about reinstating a missing crime. And yeah, also crimes of aggression was added successfully. So we know it can be done.
Yeah, so yeah, how this is going to work is there's going to be, hopefully pretty soon, a proposal at the International Criminal Court to amend the Rome Statute, and we know this because a lot of nations are starting, either through working with the Stop Ecocide Foundation or on their own, are starting to really clue into the idea of adding ecocide as a crime, as a major pillar of the global community's movement towards a sustainable planet in the face of climate change and biodiversity loss. So that it's the member states in the ICC all vote one vote per country. Jamie, do you remember how many countries are part of the International Criminal Court? I can't off the top of my head.
It's currently 123.
Thank you.
And so you need 2/3 of all countries to pass an amendment. And then
Yes.
after that, it's binding on all countries.
Yeah, and so once that amendment gets passed, and a lot of what Stop Ecocide is doing is pushing governments in countries around the world, including in Canada with Stop Ecocide Canada, to support the adoption of a crime of ecocide at the ICC. And I guess I'll lead a little more into this in the mindset change, which I think is the really profound part of ecocide law, because I mean traditionally we kind of view the environment as something that people extract resources from, and not as something that people are a part of, that people are inseparable from, and that we have an obligation to look after the whole. And so I like this graphic that says eco versus ego, where it's a more realistic look at our legal framework, which is quite outdated in this regard and is missing some very significant pieces, and ecocide is a very big part of that. Right.
Yeah, so of course, I guess some of you here might remember this day over 2 years ago now, which was the Fridays for Future general strike, at which 2,000 people turned out in Nelson. And so the purpose of kind of including this is just to illustrate how much a law of ecocide would really help this. The idea behind criminalizing ecocide is it helps pretty much every existing environmental movement. It gives a framework to build on, and it kind of lays the groundwork. And obviously this shows, events like this show that people want something to change, and they want something to change now.
Yeah, and so we are seeing that shift in terms of governments around the world that are starting to take up ecocide. We were remarking earlier that we have to update this slide with France and Emmanuel Macron, because it's no longer the best example of governments standing up on ecocide. But the referendum that they had in France, which was basically citizens' assemblies that they set up in the country to discuss climate change and to come up with solutions. And one of the solutions that the people of France thought was really important was ecocide. And so that was proposed to the French government, and they're currently waffling on it quite a bit. But other governments in Europe, like Belgium and then other countries around the world, particularly a few island nations, are really taking off with the idea right now, like Vanuatu. So it's growing around the world, and particularly Stop Ecocide as the organization, which is an organization that was set up to kind of promote ecocide law in countries around the world, especially in the last 2 years, has really expanded into countries, whereas before it was mostly limited to the UK where it started. So it's now ecocide law is starting to become much more of a discussion, and we saw that with Stop Ecocide going to COP26, which was the first time that Stop Ecocide had ever gone to a COP. And Jamie.
Yeah, so of course, alongside that, the campaign has been kind of connecting with all sorts of people. For example, Greta Thunberg, who in the summer of 2020 presented an open letter to the European Parliament, and one of the top demands was for a law of ecocide. And then this is when the Stop Ecocide campaign convened a panel of expert lawyers to draft the official definition of ecocide. And that definition did come out in, well, I suppose last year now, in 2021. And so now we do have kind of a legally robust definition of ecocide, which has been really exciting in moving the conversation forward.
Yeah. And yeah, we should have included that in the presentation. I can draw it up afterward in the Q&A if people are curious what the legal definition is. Yeah, and I guess this is a list of Stop Ecocide teams around the world that have kind of popped up in the last year and a half. So the Netherlands and Spain and Ireland, Denmark, Belgium, New Zealand. All right.
Yeah, and so I guess what specifically are we doing as Stop Ecocide Canada? Well, we've been doing several things. We have had lots of meetings with politicians from all different federal political parties. And we've actually received an expression of support from at least one MP in every party, which is very, very exciting. Back a slide, please.
Okay.
Yeah, so as I said, we had at least one MP from every party in support of this idea, which is very exciting. And then at the same time, we've also been building the campaign kind of at a grassroots level. So, well, this is kind of obviously a picture of lots of people who we kind of talked about Stop Ecocide to, and we went on a bit of a march and those kinds of things. And we have petitions, paper petitions, which we've had read in Parliament. And we've also created a series of podcasts and webinars, which are still available online if anyone's interested in that.
All right. So I guess I'll give a quick overview of a few of the things that Stop Ecocide being at COP26. Some of the things that we were focusing on and why we felt it was necessary to go to COP26 as an organization. So yeah, I mean, COP26, it's I mean, it's a really big conference of environmental organizations from around the world were involved. So was the government component and the industry component. And so COP26 was divided into a couple of zones. There was the blue zone and the green zone, and there was honestly what most of the things happening around COP26 took place outside of the conference in the city of Glasgow. And so a lot of that were meetings, lectures, and yeah, and gatherings and protests, and there was uncountable amount of things going on. It was definitely somewhat overwhelming, but the what Stop Ecocide was focused on was getting that name recognition and dialogue out about ecocide as a crime. Seeing as it was the first time that we were able to send delegates to the blue zone, as well as send people into the not-for-profit sphere to discuss ecocide and to partner with other organizations. So we have a few photos here just of talks around, mostly around ecocide. Yeah, Jamie, is there anything you want to add to kind of the mission of Stop Ecocide at COP?
Yeah, no, I mean, as you said, the mission was just really to get the word out there, and we found that that is basically the single most impactful thing people can do is just use the word to grow awareness of the campaign. And I'd say that was pretty successful at COP26. We saw lots of examples of people using the word kind of outside specific Stop Ecocide events.
Yeah, I'd say that was a big thing too, and there were a lot of articles published in the aftermath of of COP26 about ecocide law. Some from a few people we spoke to. It was very exciting, and so I'm glad that it's picking up name recognition within the international climate justice field, but also within governments, which has been where a lot of our efforts are kind of pointed at in terms of pressuring governments to support ecocide, or support stopping ecocide. Unfortunately, far too many governments support ecocide. Anyway, if you want to learn more about what Stop Ecocide did at COP26, you can check out Stop Ecocide's website, which is stopecocide.earth, and look for the COP26 summary. I can also drop that link in the chat in a minute. And yeah, and check out, because there was a whole bunch of stuff going on. We were there for some of it, but it was a decent sized team that we had for the COP26 conference, which was really great to be a part of. And yeah, there was stuff happening every single day. It was just all over the place. All right, yeah, and there's also some information about Stop Ecocide Canada. Look for the Ecocide campaign on social media. Yeah, and of course, if you have any questions about ways to get involved or about certain aspects of the campaign, we can direct you to further information. And yeah, I think that'll wrap up our presentation segment, and we can kind of open things up. I'll quit sharing screen.
Sharing.
There we go. Okay. All right. So, Linda.
Well, maybe we can just do some introductions and people can ask questions. Just before we do that, I'm reminded of, the global action that had to take place to stop all the CFCs going into the atmosphere and creating the holes in the ozone layer. And it actually took a lot of government action for that to happen. And I really appreciate what you guys are doing, because hearts and minds have to change. And locally, but also globally, there has to be action to save the earth at this point. So anyway, thanks for all the work you're doing. So maybe we could just, what do you think, Shelley? Should we just have people raise their hands, or should we do a round of introductions? What do you think?
We could do a round of introductions. Maybe people can just say where their name and where they're from, just to give us an idea of where we drew everybody from. And then, yes, just raise your hand if you have a question or a comment you'd like to make. Does that sound okay?
I'm seeing we do have one in the chat as well.
Great.
Okay.
I'm never sure if everybody's screen shows exactly the same order. I've got Brenda up in the top corner. So would it be easiest if I just said a name and then people can, okay. Okay, Brenda.
Hi, I'm Brenda. I live in British Columbia. I've just been here for about a year and I heard about this great organization and just wanted to join in and find out more about it.
And Eva?
Hi, I'm Eva Strom from Vernon. I'm really excited to meet you and to know that there's young people involved in this kind of thing. And you brought up about the International Criminal Court, and it just makes so much sense that we have to have an international ecocide court as well. And I'm just wondering, like, some of the things you talked about made me think about Paul Hanley's book 11, where he talks about how our 11 billion people going to live on our planet in a few years. And he pointed out that, you know, all over the world, there's people doing good things, that they're doing projects that are showing that they can turn the environmental degradation around and that kind of thing. But he also talks a lot about how we have to change the hearts and minds. So that's a big thing also. And then I just wanted to comment about, like, it's a very complex thing because water is a huge issue for many people. And now water has become a commodity and it's not in the Charter of Human Rights. Like in 1948, when the Charter of Human Rights was formed, nobody was thinking about water, but now it's a huge issue for many people. Anyway, thank you for your time and
Thanks,
effort.
Ava. Yeah, I think that definitely our legal system needs a huge update when it comes to environmental law as a broad scope, and ecocide law specifically targets the big major damages that we do, but certainly I think water is so important. I think I can answer Molly's question in the chat because I saw that was popped down, and that's a pretty reasonable question about the Molly was asking about the legal definition of ecocide that was proposed by the lawyer panel, and also about LNG and fracking and pipelines. So I will send that to the LNG fracking and pipelines to Jamie, but I will give you quickly the legal definition for ecocide, which is ecocide means unlawful or wanton acts committed with knowledge that there is a substantial likelihood of severe and either widespread or long-term damage to the environment being caused by those acts. And I will pop the link to that definition in the chat. Oh, Jamie's already done it. Great.
Yeah, and then in regards of how that kind of goes with LNG and pipelines, well, certainly fracking definitely qualifies as ecocide. In fact, it was the people's disgust with fracking which kind of prompted the campaign to kind of take off initially. And so basically, if ecocide was a crime, that the fracking and the pipelines just wouldn't be allowed to continue in the way that they are now. It would have to change, and the idea really is that this will change fast because countries will see that this crime is coming. As soon as it's proposed and there's enough support at the ICC, we will know that it's coming, and corporations will begin to change because of that. And then the second bit of the question, yes, Canada is a member of the ICC. The US is not, and of course that is quite an interesting thing. Is what you do with countries which are not members, and so they would be affected kind of indirectly because, for example, a company based in the US would no longer be able to go to, well, Canada or any other country that was part of the ICC and conduct ecocidal practices there. So again, that would force some change, although of course it would be ideal if they were members.
Mhm.
I hope that answers the question.
Lori Goldman, would you like to introduce yourself and do you have a comment?
Sure. I'm Lori Goldman. I'm based in Penticton, working on lots of different climate actions and talking to ministers and MLAs and learning that everybody has good intentions and no actual action to make a big difference. I don't know if people realize that there's a lawyer who prosecuted Chevron down in the States. And there was I think, $2 billion penalty that Chevron had to pay. And they took him to court and prosecuted him. And he spent 600 days in house arrest. And he then went into jail for contempt of court because he wouldn't turn over all of his technology to the court. So I'm wondering how, if there was an ecocide law that was an international law that the ICC, is that what it is? ICC would be able to uphold, how would that stop the big corporations that don't want to pay out, that are quite happy to kill people and destroy water and whatever? How would that prevent them from taking retribution on lawyers or on protesters?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really good and hi, nice to see you again, Lori. I think that's a really good point, and I'll speak to it a bit, and maybe Jamie will want to pick up on it too. But the fact that our legal system currently in Canada works mostly to prosecute and persecute environmentalists, environmental activists, people who are perhaps on the front lines of trying to block a pipeline or trying to protect a forest. And those people can go to jail. A corporation that dumps tons of toxic pollutants into the environment or is very irresponsible, nobody is very unlikely anybody's going to go to jail over it. They probably get a fine, like in that case you were talking about with Chevron. And so that's a huge flaw in our legal system, is that it's very currently angled at extracting resources and protecting those extractive processes. And so instead, ecocide kind of flips that narrative completely around. It says that human beings do have a right to have a planet, to have clean water, to have an environment that isn't destroyed by massive forces. And so, yeah, in that case, if a company is brought to court over for crimes of ecocide, then we're not looking at a fine being thrown at them. We're looking at people being put in jail. And I also want to point out that a big part of ecocide isn't just throwing people in jail. I don't think that that's the most productive way to look at it by any means. It's looking at having that as a deterrent, a preventative measure. So when a CEO or a board of directors is looking at a mining project that might have some serious human rights violations, they're not going to say, they're not going to say, oh, well, we have a fiduciary obligation to all of our shareholders, so this is going to make us lots of money, we have to go through with it. They're going to say, oh, we have a fiduciary obligation to our shareholders, we can't commit crimes of ecocide and get brought before the International Criminal Court. So that's I think the huge difference in perspective that ecocide brings. Jamie, do you have anything you'd like to respond to that?
Yeah, not much. It is essentially that the ICC goes after the CEOs themselves and all the politicians who authorized it, or whoever is directly responsible for the harm. And when those people see the possibility of them suffering real consequences for it rather than just that corporation paying a fine, that will be a major incentive to change. And yeah, of course, it's not ecocide law isn't kind of the silver bullet answer to everything, but it does provide some groundwork. It's like I remember someone once used the analogy of imagine fighting for human rights without any human rights laws, and that is essentially what people fighting for the rights of the environment are doing now.
Erin, you've got a question?
Hi guys, how are you? Thank you guys so much for this presentation. I think I think we should all be, if we really understand the problem, we're running through the streets, like we need to change this right now. It's huge stuff. And I think this is a great way to do it, because obviously we need to target how do you fight it with no laws. So that's exactly the point. I had just had this idea and I just wanted to pass it on to you. I don't know if there's anything to do with it, but a lot of people ask me like, what can I do? And it's hard to say as a person, just as a little person on the street, we're just, and you know how there's always donor levels for organizations like silver, gold, platinum, or whatever. And I think donating is something that I do, and I'm going to get involved with the organization as well. But I was wondering if we could think about it in terms of like actions in our life, like silver would be like reduce meat by half, and not fly, like only take one flight a year or something like that. And gold level is like reduce meat by 90%, something like that. Like things that you could like go on and say, I'm going to do this, and join it with other people and add it to this. And you can find ways to integrate it into your life. And there's levels that, different people can do it at different levels. And that could like add clout to, like, I know I'm vegetarian for the environment, but like, I know I'm so small, but like, if other people were doing it too, and we were pointing to the fact that we've all done this together, that adds up to something, and that makes us all feel on the ground like we've done something. So I just want to kind of float that idea and see if maybe you can do it or think about it.
Yeah, I think that definitely points to the idea of individual action and then collective action, right? And so I mean, I think an international crime of ecocide is a really good example of a very big collective action.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd say individual action is also very important. And it's I mean we're looking at, often we have this argument of it's not the problem of the individual, the governments and the companies.
That's what people say.
They're a big problem. They're the ones we should focus on. And then other people say, oh, it's the individual, what we can do for ourselves that will really make a difference. And honestly, I think both are extremely necessary. Yeah.
Just an idea. Thanks.
Maxine, I think you had a comment you wanted to make.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Maxine from Grand Forks. I want to first of all thank both of you for such a wonderful presentation, and it's so encouraging, to see your level of involvement, and hopefully you'll be able to make a living at, staying in this same venue for many years to come. I just wanted, as I've been listening to kind of comments and questions, just thinking even about the whole water situation and, what degree and what level? Is water okay or not okay? And if it means you can just drink it and you're not going to have some serious consequence within 24 hours, is that the level that's okay with water? Is putting chlorine in water okay when we know that, over time there's serious consequences? And so where is that fine line? When you're talking about if there were laws, where would that law fit or where it would be? I know, like living in Grand Forks, the city chlorinated the water and it's not been the same. Vegetables don't grow the same as they used to before the chlorine was in there. And so heaven knows how that's all accumulating in our bodies if you're drinking that chlorinated water, for example. And so I just want to get your take on that. When you look at water and pollution, that Tech, Cominco, and Trail, often or frequently has some kind of accident and spills all kinds of pollutants into the Columbia River. And, they face like serious fines from the US for polluting the Columbia. And it seems to me they just look at that as the cost of doing business. So just wondering about your thoughts and comments on that.
Yeah, I mean, that is exactly the problem. It's just the cost of doing business. And that's hopefully what a law of ecocide would change. And I mean, kind of in terms of where the fine line is, it would be decided ultimately by the courts, but really, as in the definition, if it's widespread and either, or if it's severe and either widespread or long term, then it would likely be considered ecocide.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Well, as a member of the Baha'i faith, I believe that, we're not really going to find solutions to the world's problems until we start to view each other as one human family. And, as we're told, we can't separate the human heart from the environment. But I recently listened to an interesting talk, and the speaker gave a talk. It was a TED talk on the culture of contest and how that is undermining all the systems in the world that are serving our societies. This culture of contest, whether it's economical or political or whatever system. And one comment he made was that protests are actually a form of or part of a culture of contest, because it's something that divides people or pits one side against another. And so that protests are inherently not helpful in finding solutions to the world's problems. So I'm with you when I say people going to jail is not really that helpful. And I'm wondering about this movement, Stop Ecocide. What part does protest take part of that, or is that part of the way it operates, or is it really based on finding solutions in other ways, in more positive ways?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. It's kind of we've certainly had a presence at kind of protests and other events before, where someone will kind of go and kind of have flyers or kind of do a talk or something like that. But it's not. We've never, as a group, kind of held a Stop Ecocide kind of rally or really any event. I suppose the only events we've actually organized have been kind of talks, and even those we haven't actually organized very many of. So yeah, our strategy so far has been more kind of just going to any events that we find where we might be able to connect with people and kind of doing it that way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Great.
yeah, you can march for something. I don't feel comfortable marching against something. I guess that's,
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
great peace studies discussion right there, is in terms of the effectiveness of different strategies to achieve change.
mhm. Okay, Linda.
I think that one of the most important things is education. It's these peace studies talks. It is how do we change the hearts and minds of children and of young people so that they understand what's happening to the earth, so that they aren't just thinking business is business. It's all about making money, that success is measured by how much money you make, and nothing really matters except material success. So I love that. You know, when we first started the Peace Studies program, there was a discussion, should it be peace and conflict studies? And we did not want to go that way. And I'm so happy that it went from peace studies to peace and justice studies, because that to me seems a very positive direction to go in. And I think that the more people that are involved in education, the better our understanding of what doing things together really can achieve. Because one side against another isn't going to get us there. Anyway, you guys have been great. I'm really inspired by your commitment. So
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Pam, you've got a question or a comment, and after that, I don't know if it's Brant or Jean, one of you.
So my name's Pam and I live in the Denver metro area. I'm here because I'm longtime friend of Linda's. I taught school in Grand Forks, our first years of teaching. I'm had never heard of ecocide, so I'm incredibly educated by your presentation and appreciate it a great deal. And I'm especially impressed with the analysis that goes along with how, you know, our corporate environment supports basically ecocide. But I also find myself wondering if by making it a crime, with all that's involved in responding to crime, if we're using the master's tools to, you know, I wonder about that as a strategy.
Yeah. Okay. I can talk to this one a bit. Yeah. I mean, it's using the current Western legal framework that particularly Western international law, which is punitive. And personally, I have a lot of issues with how we can conduct our criminal justice system as a whole. Anyway, I would point out that most unlike a lot of laws in society, which tend to have more severe repercussions towards poor or disadvantaged communities, putting it at the international level does put it at a place where it can be used by ordinary people, in the same way that crimes of genocide or crimes against humanity can be used by populations that have suffered from these losses to have a way of getting justice for those crimes, and particularly towards deterring future acts of injustice. But yes, it does function within the criminal legal system that everybody in Canada is subject to, and also people in many countries around the world.
Okay. Jean or Brant?
Yeah, Brant and Jean Zayak. We live in Castlegar. In fact, we're right below the Mirror Center. We feel the warmth of the center all the time. I'd like to thank you guys for your service to humanity. And earlier on, you mentioned that when 2/3 of the countries come on board for ecocide, I was just wondering if a country or a company breaks the law, how is it enforced? Would it be the World Court? And then how would it be enforced once something, you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So basically, once that vote happens, and assuming that over 2/3 do vote in favour, then each member of the ICC, each country has to adopt ecocide into its own kind of domestic laws. So, for example, I mean, in Canada, we have a domestic law against genocide because it's also an international law kind of thing. So if an ecocide happened, it would be prosecuted initially in the country where it took place under that country's legal system. But if the country was failing to actually deal with it for whatever reason, then it could go to the ICC. So one of the main criticisms of the ICC is that it's very slow, and cases take a very, very long time to work their way through it. And we're hopeful that this will be different with ecocide, because there is a chance for it to be prosecuted in the country where it happened first, whereas with genocide, you're just never going to get that, because a genocidal maniac in charge of a country isn't going to prosecute themselves for genocide. So it kind of has to go to the ICC. But that's how it would happen, if that answers the question.
Yeah, and hopping on to that, there is also that trickle-down effect of member states, including Canada, would be required upon the introduction of this at the International Criminal Court. Those individual countries, like the Canadian government, would have to bring forward similar laws into place in Canada, so that there would be that legal framework for companies or government officials or whoever is involved with ecocide, for that to be brought forward there. So it would have effects on our domestic laws as well as the international law.
Yeah, so I was wondering how it would be enforced. Would the United Nations stop this country from doing it, or company? Or sure, the World Court comes up with a decree and say, yes, this is wrong, you cannot do this. How is it going to be stopped is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, well, hopefully it would be stopped. Most cases of ecocide would be stopped well before they got to the International Criminal Court, but it would be stopped with arrest warrants and with leaders of corporations or of governments being put in jail, much like somebody who commits acts of genocide is put in jail. And again, hopefully the structure of the world would respond to that well before the crime of ecocide actually even became part of the International Criminal Court. But it definitely it will end up with those sanctions being brought to people who who have committed crimes of ecocide. I hope that answers the question in terms of the enforcement.
The world is progressing in that direction. Someday we'll have a world commonwealth that looks after all these things, and even a world police force that'll stop it if it has to be done. We're not there yet, but hopefully that'll happen. But thank you very much.
Yeah.
So I know we're a little bit over time already, but it's, we're getting, Jean, did you have something you wanted to say now? Oh, I saw your hand up still. Okay. Are there any other questions or comments that anybody would like to pose? Oh, there we go. Go ahead, Vicky. Oh, who's asking the question there?
Terry.
Oh, Terry.
Hi there. Hello, Terry Huva and Vicky from Proctor.
Close.
The cause of justice is a great cause, and this is unjust, what is happening in the world right now. And going through the courts is one method, slow. Kudos to you two for doing this work. And I would like to, I think it might have been Gandhi, I'm not sure. He said, when asked about how effective you can be, he said, have you ever been in a room where there's one mosquito? And I think that keep doing the good work, keep making some noise, and good for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add, I've been watching you guys for a couple of years now, and your leadership is very inspiring. And yeah, so thanks from here too. We got to get you doing this in Nelson. Have a COP26 report.
Yeah.
We'll get that going.
Oh God. I think, yeah, there were what was it? There was like 30,000 people were part of the COP26 event. So that would be what, like 3 times the population of Nelson. That'd be exciting. But yes, thank you. Okay.
Okay. So any other comments or questions?
I'm just going to.
Linda?
Have you spoken to any high school classes, elementary schools? Have you had a chance to talk about your experience going to Glasgow? It would be great if people, kids had a chance to see your faces and hear what you're thinking about and doing from Nelson. It would be great.
Yeah, I had one right before I left. I actually had a Zoom meeting with a class in Castlegar. But yeah, it's definitely something that we like to do. And I mean, was thinking of myself as a student in high school and middle school, which shockingly wasn't all that long ago. I do definitely remember those times when people like Montana from the Eco Society or people would come in and talk and interact with you and definitely lay some of that groundwork for growing up thinking about these big issues that we're faced with.
Well, I hope you get a chance to do that. We'll see what we can do in Grand Forks. Maybe we can set up some Zoom things with the schools here.
I'd be happy to.
Okay.
And maybe Jamie too. We have to keep in mind that Jamie is in the UK right now still. And so it's very late, or rather very early for Jamie right now. So round of applause for Jamie for staying up so late.
Thank you so much. Tom, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, I'm Tom Schneider. I live in Nelson, and I'm actually in southern Oaxaca, Mexico right now. But my question was, when you guys went to COP, did you pay the carbon credits for your airplane ticket?
Like to. I don't have an incredible amount of money, and a lot of that money went towards getting to COP. But I would say that we did actually, before going to COP, investigate taking a boat from Halifax to Liverpool, which would have been a very viable option had it not been for COVID-19, which seriously disrupts that. And I mean, yeah, I mean, it's really difficult with our current limited source of international travel, but hopefully as we figure out our international and domestic transportation systems, the need to fly becomes a lot less. Because it definitely is something that always strains on my conscience. But I'm hoping that bringing a crime of ecocide into place will ultimately be a carbon credit into itself, and will offset a lot of future emissions that might happen.
Well, Lynn, I'm not, or Jamie, I'm not really kind of criticizing you. I think it informs people being asked to do voluntary things to offset their carbon. I mean, you can talk about whether carbon offsets really do anything or not, or whether legitimate, or if certain people do this and that. But I think the reason I mentioned it is you guys are very committed environmentalists, and you know, whether it's Project Drawdown or there's several other sites that you can pay your carbon credits. But if you can't afford to pay your carbon credits, who can? Those Pacific Islanders, those people in India that are trying to get enough calories to their kids. I'm just saying, we as Canadians, if we can't voluntarily pay for our own carbon use, for our own, however you want to do it. I mean, I'm on vacation, Air Canada, you can go to their site and just click make my trip green. It was about 8% of the cost of the ticket. But I think it's one of those issues that informs, you know, asking people to drive less, or asking people in, you know, 2/3 of the world who don't have, if not 99% of the world, that don't have the resources we as Canadians do, to pay for that. I mean, if we can't pay it, then who can? And that's really what it's going to take with a, you know, carbon drawdown situation, especially the ambitious credit. So I'm not really criticizing you or Jamie. I'm just trying to bring up the issue by using this illustration in the first person. And I don't know, Jamie, do you have a comment? I know Jamie from when we did the unarmed civilian peacekeeping course in 2019. So I'm not trying to pick on you, but what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it is, yeah, well, a very broad topic. There's a lot to say, and it's true. I mean, you know, we need to be, as people in some of the wealthier parts of the world, we need to be kind of making this shift, you know, fast and first compared to other parts of the world. But how we get there is, yeah, well, I guess there are many different pathways, and really ultimately we will only know what the right decisions were in the future. Just have to hope that they are the right ones that we're making now. That's a bit vague, but
as I said, I'm not trying to be critical. I just think we need to look at ourselves in terms of what we think we can afford. You know, can I afford an electric car or not? You know, or however you want to say that. Anyway, thanks for taking my question.
Of course, yeah, I think it is an important topic.
Okay, we're approaching the time that the library is going to close, who are so nice in providing this platform for us. Are there any, we might have time for one or two more quick comments if anybody's got anything else to say. Okay. Are you there, Erin?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm about to close up the library.
That's okay. Well, I'm going to let Linda make closing comments, and I just want to thank you too myself for the constructive way you're approaching to change the world. And I hope you can see that a lot of us are gray-haired here tonight. and I hope that you, I mean, are you seeing a lot of support from younger people your age? Are you seeing that? Because I think change is going to be generational.
Yeah, we do. It's there is support from pretty much every age range, actually, which is the other thing that's really exciting to me. No, it's definitely something's changing.
Well, I think we're drawing to the end. I have a favorite quote by an American philosopher named Erich Fromm. He said that for the first time in history, the physical survival of the human race depends on a radical change of the human heart. And I think we're looking at the survival of the planet, the survival of the human family, being dependent on a change of the human heart. So changing hearts and minds, you helped do that tonight. Thank you so much. Your efforts, your service, your being willing to be here. Thanks, Jamie, all the way in the UK. It's a long night for you. And thank you so much, Lynn. So wishing you all the best. We're with you. We're working with you. And we hope that you continue with your efforts, and that you're able to somehow get in touch with more kids, other young people, and know that these gray-haired people out here are definitely on your side. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks once again to the library and to everybody for participating. Thank you.